Mr. Clerk, take a roll, please. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Ashley McDonough is absent tonight. I'll be filling in for her. Mayor John Eric Hoover.
Here.
Vice Mayor Todd McClary.
Here.
Councilman Tom Kinsella.
Here.
Councilwoman Linda Rodriguez. Let the record show that Councilwoman Linda Rodriguez is absent from tonight's meeting. Councilman Bill Colombo.
Here.
City Attorney Nancy Meyer.
Here.
City Manager Matthew Copeland.
Here. Thank you. We've got two sets of minutes tonight. One thing I want to point out on the town hall meeting minutes, there was some, I guess, discussion on when those need to be approved. So you'll see that the town hall meeting minutes from September are on people tonight, and assuming probably the next meeting, January, we'll approve the ones from the previous town hall. So those will be more quickly coming up, but we need to have a council session in order to approve those. So looking for a motion to approve council minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd like to open up comments from the general public. I've got three signed up tonight, or two signed up. Sorry. Danny Fields, welcome.
My name is Danny Fields, and my address is 114 Wheel Kid. And so I just want to thank you again for being able to get do stuff in the park to reach out to the community with the city, and that was a great turnout. With our food count, we had over 350 plus people with kids and family, and the police officers, they got to pass out toys as well as the fire department. I thank all of you there, Ron was there, and Matthew, and in the feedback, the people getting used to knowing you guys and realizing what you stand for, good values for them and for the people, and it makes a difference in the community. So I do speak for Light of the World and for the other businesses that's there and other churches and for you guys. I mean, just even the fire department with bringing the toys. A lot of the toys came from them. I'm assuming for Toys for Tots. This is a great way to represent, to get to know our community. And, I know a lot of them come in here and, they got a lot of complaints and, dealing with speeding and golf carts and all these things that we deal with. But there's so much more behind the scenes that they don't know what you guys do and the responsibility you have and stuff like that. So I just want to honor you guys. I thank the new city manager. Nice man to talk to. He's easy. From what I learned from him, and I believe you guys are a testimony to this, that he listens, he uses the experience before on how to manage. And I do thank the operational managers too, because Sal did an excellent job. But it's all about listening to one another, being a team, and being able to share and make decisions and votes on it. That's what our government was founded on, to keep the checks and balance, and then listen to people as well and the needs of them. So, it's a hard job, but it's an easy job at the same time, because what you do is you just stand for what is right and what good. And I thank you for that, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Next on the list, I have Dave Mueller. Welcome.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive. I just want to mention, I noticed the format in the minutes have changed, and I appreciate the fact that the city manager has actually gone through and prepared a draft of what he wants to speak on. And what that does is it shows the character and the preparedness of an individual. And I think you guys made the right choice here. What this does, it allows people to actually see something that is actually thinking about and move forward with. And I appreciate having notes in there. One suggestion, I'd like to see them ahead of time rather than after the fact, but that's his don't have to type all these things in, you just have to include them and maybe add a comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. That's all I've signed up. By show of hands, anyone else like to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on to comments from the city manager. I'll turn it over to Mr. Koppler for his comments.
And it's because they're very fluid up until the very last minute. So, earlier today, I had an opportunity to attend the Innovate Pasco 2050 meeting for the stakeholders in the county. This was, I think, more aimed at kind of the staff and representation, representatives from the cities within the city. Unfortunately, fortunately, I guess, I was the only attendee with all the different staff members from the MPO there. So they were bombarded by a lot of issues that I kind of see, affecting the city of Port Richey as it relates to transportation in the county. So I guess from one perspective, they got an earful from me. The others, the city was heard, I think, on a number of different issues. And hopefully they'll take it to heart and be working with us to look at some of the issues that could impact the development of the city going down the road. And one of the primary issues that we talked about was US 19, obviously, and its impact on how we will develop over the next 20, 30 years. There will be other opportunities. Actually, tonight, I believe in Dade City, there is another opportunity for residents to participate in that, as well as locally tomorrow at 5:30 in Newport Richey at the Recreation and Aquatic Center. They'll also be doing a listening type of event to get input from the public on things that are impacting transportation in the county. Something that I think hopefully people, if they can't take advantage of that, we'll be posting on our website as well as through social media a link to a survey that they're going to be, or that they are doing. And so again, that's an opportunity for residents, from their home anytime in the next few months to fill out that survey and let the county know what they feel the transportation needs for the next 20 plus years will be. So take advantage of these opportunities, because you don't always get opportunities to talk to the government like we're getting right now. We also last week had a meeting internally with staff to start the planning for the fireworks on July 5th, 2024. Of course, as Mayor and Council is aware, money has been appropriated to do the fireworks. Staff is discussing ways to make it a bigger and better event for the upcoming year, especially with the time we have been allotted to plan for it. To that end, looking at different ways to entertain the public when they show up for the event, and talking to the different businesses in the area to help encourage them to participate by providing some resources to the city to make it even a bigger and better opportunity. So we're working with, hopefully we'll be working with a number of the businesses to participate with us in that event coming up, July 5th. Last week I met with City Manager of Newport Richey. We were able to discuss a number of issues of interest between Newport Richey and the City of Port Richey. I think there was very open dialogue about, kind of from her perspective to me, what, the issues in the past have been and where we can find opportunities to work together. And again, there's a lot of opportunity in this area, and working together with the City of Newport Richey is only going to be beneficial. I mean, beneficial to both of us, but especially us, I think. So we're going to continue to meet on the monthly basis. And of course, as things happen where we need to talk, I think we'll establish a good relationship where we can make those phone calls as well. I met with a property owner last week regarding a parcel the city owns near Cornell Street. The parcel is about 0.17 acres and was acquired by the city in 1955. So we don't have a lot of information on this parcel, so we need to get an understanding of how it came into our possession so we can actually talk about what it is they're wanting to do. And they would obviously like to acquire it, but that could mean something different, that depending upon how we received that land back in 1955. hopefully it'll be something that we can bring to a council to start discussing sometime in the beginning of the new year. Also met with representatives of Whiskey Joe's to discuss their request to acquire city-owned land at the corner of Coty and Old Post Road. I think they had reached out to mayor and council prior to the last meeting to at least let us know that they were interested in doing something. We had a very good meeting in terms of what their plans were, what their needs were. There's some work that still needs to be done before we can bring that to you to start talking about it. Again, I'm looking at the first part of the year, maybe the first meeting in January, to have something prepared for you to start discussing that and see what you want to do. And let's see, Chief Robinson and I met with representatives of the County Emergency Communications Center. They have made a proposal to the city to start handling emergency services dispatch for the city. It was a very preliminary meeting. They kind of gave us an overview of what they saw that relationship could be, as well as gave us an opportunity to look at their operations there. I know the chief has been there before. It was my first time. There are a lot of questions that have to be answered before we can really bring it forward to you. But I just wanted you to be aware that dialogue is starting. They've presented something to us, and we'll be kind of working together, the chief and I, to come up with the pros and cons of the proposal so we can present that to you and you can start discussing whether it's an avenue you want to go down. And today, the fire department as well as the police chief had a meeting with the Coast Guard, the County Emergency Management, I think Newport Richey, if I'm not mistaken, to have further discussions on the diesel fuel spill that occurred last week that impacted the bayou as well as the waterways here around the city. I'm going to turn it over actually to the fire chief to give maybe a little bit of update and talk about what happened, what the process has been, and where we stand today.
We'll start off with the call itself, just to remind everybody what exactly happened and what went on that night. The call came in, it was a walk-up. It wasn't a 911 call, it was a walk-up to a police officer that said that he had smelled diesel fuel heavy in the area of the boat ramp there. That instituted a call to our dispatch from the police officer. The fire department was there. At 3:19 is when the walk-up came in. At 3:25, we were on the scene. We did confirm that there was Captain Quinn was actually the initial incident commander. That's why he's here tonight. They did confirm that there was some fuel in the water, and immediately notified the Coast Guard, National Response Center, which we call the NRC, State Warning Point, which coordinates state resources, and county's emergency management. So those were made within 2 minutes of being on the scene. Crews searched the immediate area all night, inclusive of commercial boats and docking areas, things that they had access to, trying to find it. But they were hampered by darkness. Trying to track a fuel spill in the day is problematic. But it was 3 o'clock in the morning and there was heavy fog. So they were spent from 3 o'clock in the morning until 8:10 when emergency management arrived, and about 8:20 something, the Coast Guard arrived there. And all night they searched and tried to find the culprit for it. But again, they were hampered by Mother Nature. Once Coast Guard got there, they assumed responsibility for the call. It's their jurisdiction. The coastal waterways are Coast Guard, and I believe once it crosses 19, that's when it goes to DEP. So that's the breaking point, the fine line, so to speak, between Coast Guard and Department of Environmental Protection. So the Coast Guard got there, and we repeated the process. They actually boarded. Again, there was a lot of miscommunication. That's why I'm glad we got the chance to air this. But they actually boarded several of the commercial vessels right there in the bayou, things they had access to check for leaks. They actually boarded the casino boat. They actually boarded the casino boat. They weren't able to get inside, but they were able to get on the boat and check down in the hull to see if there was any issues with that, and they found none. We escorted them to the marinas. All the marinas within our area searched. Ironically, we came across, of all things, a sailboat that was leaking some gasoline when the bilge pump would kick on. And they handled that while they were there, contacting the owner and the marina. At that point, it was still undetermined. They couldn't find out exactly where it was. And I know a common question is how much fuel leaked. Again, we don't have that answer either. It's easy to say when they have a 100-gallon boat, boat that holds 100 gallons of fuel and it's got 10 gallons left in it. We can say, well, there's a 90-gallon leak, but just a little bit of oil or fuel spreads a long way in the water. So there was just no way for anybody to give you a number as to how much fuel leaked. Again, the Coast Guard stayed that whole day. We stayed even into the night. We would keep going back, trying to find stuff throughout the night. The next morning, the Coast Guard came back and they brought drones and they checked the area again, and then couldn't find nothing specific to a specific boat or point of origin, so to speak. So then throughout that whole next day and even the next night, our crews would go out and just do random checks as the tide would come in, or during slack tide, to try to see if we could find a focal point of the leak. Still to no avail. So as of now, it's undetermined where it came from, and they're still investigating. If there's any leads that the public has, excuse me, or anybody has, they would love to hear it, especially security footage if they happen to have on video and somebody doing something they shouldn't have been doing, or even if it was an accident, a line broke or something that was pumping water in there, they would love to see it, any of that information. So if any of our citizens or general public has information, it's still under investigation and will remain that way. So today we had a follow-up meeting, and the meeting was to discuss, myself, Chief Robinson was there and Captain Quinn was there, along with the Coast Guard, Pasco County Sheriff's Office, Pasco County Fire Rescue, Emergency Management, Department of Environmental Protection, and the City of Newport Richey Fire Department. We're all there. I think Commissioner Mariano was there in his office. Started off with that scenario that we had. I can say that the Coast Guard was very satisfied with our response, our city's response, and what we did and tried to accomplish. They stressed the importance of notifying the NRC immediately, which is that National Response Center. Basically, the reason for that is that starts a state report, so to speak. It gives them an incident number, and with that incident number, they can seek federal funding for the cleanup, should there be a cleanup. And then it also allows them access to reimbursement, should it be an insurance company or a private citizen. It allows them to process that and go after reimbursement should they have to, which again, we did that, so they were happy with that. I think there's it's called the Oil Spill Liability Trust Fund, and there's like $8.9 million in that, which started my wheel spinning, I got to tell you, because I had questions after that, how we can tap into some of that to help us. But then they wanted to make sure that we, as Port Richey Fire Rescue, were added to the National Response Center's notification list. I found out we're not on that. So I'm going to take care of that. It's just a simple, I'll email them, give them the information. So when there are spills in our area, they'll notify me as well. So if it doesn't come into 911, let's say it comes in through the Coast Guard, it would go to the NRC, and the NRC would send information out, but we currently wouldn't get it. So I'm going to take care of being on that. They also explain spill response and their team mission, because there's a lot of misinformation about what the Coast Guard does. Both of us were sitting there, kind of surprised a little bit, so to speak. But so their spill response team is a 10-member team that live all over the state, and they cover from Tallahassee to Naples. And then they basically work a regular work week, but after hours, that team has to be assembled. So it'd be a page or phone calls made. You live in Tallahassee and this guy lives there, and then they have to meet at a focal point to get in the truck, take the truck to the call. So that explains why they're not like police and fire rescue, to where we're sitting there 24 hours a day ready for the call. They have to assemble once the calls or the call comes in. So that's why there was that lag between 3:15 in the morning and 8 in the morning when they actually got there. So I hope that explains to some of the public why. And then their team, they have a pickup truck, 2 drones, testing kits, and they pretty much oversee cleanup should cleanup happen. So they show up, they investigate the scene, try to find the culprit, whether it be intentional or mechanical or just freak of nature. They try to find the culprit, and then if it's a collectible, cleanable spill,
That's when they hire outside contractors and they supervise the contractors. They don't actually do the cleanup work. They used to years ago, but they don't do the cleanup work anymore. They don't have the resources for it anymore. They just supervise it. Did I miss anything on that part? Yeah, yeah, because because they were getting sick. They didn't have their right PPE and this and that, so that's why they're not doing that anymore. So their spill teams are notified. Again, and they oversee the contractors to do the work, but they do want to be notified of all spills. As it may seem insignificant to some people, but if you know about a spill, notify the NRC and let them know. And other than that, I mean, one question that came across was, why couldn't we boom the river to stop the fuel from going in or out? And the Coast Guard answered that rather quickly, saying it's the booms don't work in moving water. It's more of a stagnant water area, and they wouldn't work on a spill like this. So even though they said the spill looks huge and catastrophic to us, reality is it's very minuscule, and nature just takes its course and evaporates the fuel, which sits on top of the water. It evaporates it in time. And the only reason why ours lagged so long was because that we didn't have much sun. So it happened in the middle of the night. We didn't have much sun that next day. It was a very cloudy day. So it took 2 days for it to predominantly dissipate and evaporate. So they were pretty happy with that whole process too. So to them, it's got to be a pretty significant spill and, create a pretty significant environmental issue before they start deploying federal teams and contractors to come out and handle that. Is there anything else you want to add, Chief? Yeah. Yeah, that was the key word they used. The spill, again, although it looked big, it was thin and unrecoverable. There was no way for them to collect that thin film that was on top.
So I'm going to think outside the box. This diesel spill that we have, is that heavy enough where it sank to the bottom of the river in our canals where we get some dredging out of this? Just thinking outside the box.
That question Mr. Mariano was bringing up, the same exact question, stating that, maybe if it got into the silt and sediment, maybe we can use that as a dredging item. And he wanted to know if we had any reports on any of that information. But he asked the same question. I was asking questions about myself and Captain Quinn were about reimbursement of supplies. We show up and we put some booms around can we dig into that $8.9 million and reimburse our city taxpayers for some of the supplies we were to use? But there's a process for that. But again, it has to be a collectible spill before that door would open. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Appreciate that update. 3 things real quick. The audit started officially today. So we'll be going through that for the next 3 days. And what is our general schedule to come back to council with findings?
Yeah, so the audit actually began, end of year, 10/1. So they're actually on site this week for 3 days. So they're, looking for findings and, just looking through our documentation, making sure that we have everything that we need. And then afterwards, they'll draft the financials. I'll review the draft financials, and then they'll create the preliminary audit report. We'll review that, and then we'll present it to council probably sometime, I believe it's June. Next June is when it'll actually be finalized. So quite a process.
Great, thank you. Going through the boards and committee members, I see that we have some that still need have vacancies, and we need some members. We're going to do some public relations on this and education to try to get people to sign up. One of the ones that is very important, the comprehensive land use plan. We're going to have to get people there.
Oh, you're really going to fire me up today on that one, aren't you?
I don't know what that means, but
I'll get into that in my comment.
Okay.
You're about to find out.
I guess so. But we do have vacancies there that we need to fill. So we'll be doing some advertising on that. And the last thing I had is I placed at your desk a proposed amendment to the ordinance on agricultural zoning districts. And this is something that is a result of planning and zoning meeting. Typically, I like to get things into your hands as soon as I have them so you can start reviewing them. So it just gives you more time to review and ask questions of the city attorney or myself if you have any. So you'll see that going forward as we get into large changes or even small changes to our codes. That advance notice of what's coming down the pipe. And that's all I had.
Did you want to give, or you or Nancy want to give a summary of what?
For you to take and look at and call me or call Matt if you have any questions. It'll be on, I think, the next agenda in January.
Yeah, I think we're gonna try the first
First
meeting.
agenda in January for official first reading and conversation. But I can quickly tell you, you'll see there's one edit.
Yeah, just that one
It's just
line
the
eight.
one thing. It's all there is. But there's a story behind it, and I'm happy to do it now. But the idea was just for you to have that, and you can talk to me or Matt outside of this meeting to be prepared for the meeting in January.
Thanks. Okay, moving on, comments from the mayor and city council. I'll kick it over to Councilman Colombo first, since you're kind of lonely over
I
there.
have no comments.
No? Okay. Vice Mayor McClary?
I have a couple things. We'll start off with the Comprehensive Land Use Committee. Huh? I've been part of it. I've been part of it for 6 years at this point. We've yet to have a meeting on it. I think that is part of a bigger discussion with some of these committees. Theoretically, land use is very important, like you said, and should be integrated in the overall. We've yet to have a meeting on it. So with these committees, part of the issue is people need to see that there's value. I just kind of check off on it because I don't have to do anything other than check off year to year, but I've yet to have a meeting. I know we're going through our planning and land use update. I'm not sure how we're doing that without the input of the land use committee. It's a little cart before the horse or cart without the horse at this stage. And this would have been the second update that we've gone through without any update from the land use committee. So that is something, all kidding aside, if we are going to requisition and do the PR to get people on these committees, we have to show that there's value to these committees. And you can go down, I know we have a historic committee that I believe is active now. I know it has some members, but it doesn't have any meetings or anything. So we should, as a whole, either decide use the committees, get the input from the committees, or disband the committees. And why keep them alive, because they're not providing any value other than someone's checking off a box once a year saying they want to be on it. So that's my pontificating on that one. Question for Chief, actually, on the cleanup. So as of us speaking today, there's definitively no danger to any boats or anything on the river from the fuel spill. Is that the connotation that we have?
According to the Coast Guard, that's correct.
Okay. And at this stage, there's no definable environmental impact or significant environmental impact?
Nothing that they were concerned about at all.
Okay. So people can swim in the water, fish from the water. There's nothing that is of any concern from the Coast Guard's or DEP's perspective.
I got none of that from any of them. So
Next item. And with a little bit of humility, I'll say this one. I got my water shut off today.
Pay your bill.
Pay my bill. My bill was, the statement date for my bill was 11/15. The due date was 11/30, and on 12/12 I had my water shut off. I got no announcements. They used to get them in the mail that, hey, by the way, it's a late due notice. Don't get that anymore. I called the office, and by the way, the people in the billing office are very nice. They knew, very professional, nothing but kudos to them. I think we need to look at the process a little bit overall, because if you think about it, from the billing date of 11/15 to you shutting off my water on 12/12 is less than 30 days. My mortgage company and credit card company are nicer than you guys. there was no, they said from the office that emails were sent out for courtesy notices. I checked through, I had my wife check through, we never received anything. And I'm not trying to alleviate the fact that I didn't pay my bill. I'm there with you. Because you are in charge of everything, and you're there. You like ran everything at some point. I got charged $180 in fees for a $320 bill at the end of the day. That includes an $80 off hours reconnect fee that starts at 3 o'clock. No, they said off hours reconnect fee. I had a $40 fee to turn the switch, and then $80 because it was after 3 o'clock. But your emergency time frame and business hours says 4 o'clock. We need to kind of square that circle a little bit, because right now on your bill, you say office hours are up till 4 o'clock, but if you want anything else after 3 o'clock, it's an $80 fee. Either make it 3 o'clock or put it on notice on it. I happen to own another property in another city. And so I started thinking about this, of course, being all pissed off because I had my water shut off. And I started looking at the way other cities do it. On the bill, they have when your water's being shut off. So you're billed on the 15th, the due date's on the 30th, and for instance, they say your water is being shut off, 12/17, whatever that is. I think we should definitely put that on this bill overall. They also on the back have a explanation of the timeline for their billing process. So you're billed on day 1, your due date is day 17 in this case. We're applying a 3% late fee at day 21, and on day 30, we're shutting off your water. Day 30, they're shutting off the water, not day 27.
So there was no disconnect notice at all?
I got no disconnect notice. They said that it was sent out via email. We used to get them,
Well, that should probably go out mail for sure.
well, they used to go out via mail. Apparently in October, they stopped going out via mail. I'm not sure why we're doing that, but we should definitely be continuing to send them out via regular mail, because one, I went through my entire email, I didn't get it. At least with the mail, you kind of know you're getting it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's something we definitely need to look at. I think we should extend at least to a 30 day, and I'm looking at you because you're across from me, so stop it. So, here now.
I can speak to that a little bit if you'd like.
Huh?
I can speak to that a little bit if you'd like.
Sure.
Or we both can.
Well, Go ahead.
Yeah. What was the first portion of that you had mentioned?
Well, the shutting off water within 30 days of the statement date.
Yes, so there's a billing cycle. We bill on the 15th. So we have to shut you off and assess fees before we bill. Otherwise, we can't add them onto the bill. So if we shut you off and do the billing the same day, we can't get those fees onto the bill. So we have to add the fees and then put them on that bill so you can see it in that next bill.
But so I don't understand why in a monthly cycle where there's more than 30 days, you're shutting me off in less than 30 days. Because this is 12/15
Because
to,
we can't assess fees and bill in the same day. It's too much.
everybody else does it.
Let me just say that I put this on my list of things to start looking
Yeah.
at
Let's
sooner
take-
rather than later.
And not so much for me, but from a process standpoint, one, we got to establish exactly what it is. When are you getting shut off? Ideally establish a 30-day billing cycle. I mean, that's standard virtually worldwide almost.
And
I think we really need to readdress how we notify people that they're late, because stuff happens. Trust me, I can afford to pay the bill. It happened to slip by, but to not get any notice, and the only way I found out that I didn't pay the bill is literally I turned on the faucet and I called in thinking we had an issue.
They generate notices the first of the month, so I can double check with utility billing to see if a notice was generated for your address, and send it, let
She
you know.
said they were sent via email. I
Yes.
checked and
We actually save a few $100s a month now by doing that. That's why we switched over to the email process. So they actually spent a lot of time calling every customer on the list.
$100 from me today at 180 for it.
Yeah,
but-
because of the postage and all that and creating the bills, and it's a lot of time, stuffing them all in the envelopes, mailing them all out, so.
And I agree.
It's a
And
process.
through this other city, they actually do, they do it through the email as well. They send out 2 emails that you're getting your bill. They send out 3 emails that you're actually late on your bill. So if you miss a billing cycle, you have no less than 5 emails in your inbox that, hey, something's wrong. And actually, I'm sorry, I think it's 6 because they send out one that your bill's coming due. So it's the communication and the touch points that if you're going to miss that paper, let's
Maybe we need more reminders or something.
more reminder. If email's free, do a lot of them and remind people that you're missing stuff instead of shutting off their water, Sal.
I'd go so far as say, so that they have the option to go digital on their billing, is that what you're saying?
Correct. And we
So-
actually did reach out to each customer. They phone called each customer, asked them for their email address.
But there's still,
Yeah, but I think on a disconnect notice, that should override and always go out mail before you shut my water off. I mean, I think it's great to do digital, but
Yeah.
not rely on that for a cutoff notice.
they just started the process as far as emailing, so they just initiated that really recently.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they stopped in October and I missed my November bill. But anyway, so I think there's a learning curve with this, trying to make
Yeah.
good out of a bad, that, there's some updates that we can do the way other cities are doing it, that maybe will increase those touch points and
Sure.
stop some irate person calling about their 50% of fees and everything else that they got on their bill. Ironically, the other item we also have to correct, I happen to know another house missed its billing cycle as well. And I asked the nice person, did you shut off their water? And they said no. I said, well, why didn't you shut off their water? Oh, well, if the bill's $100, we just let it go roll over to the next month. So we have to kind of square that circle a little bit too, because if you're shutting off my water and not shutting off their water, and we both made the same kind of mistake, either
Right now, we're capping it at $100. So we're shutting you off if your bill is $100 or higher and it's not paid, then we will shut you off. If it's less than that, yes, we will carry it to the next month, and more than likely, then you'll get shut off the next month because you
So it's cumulative, then.
it's
Yes.
cumulative to $100, but
$200.
that-
Otherwise, it builds up the amount of shut-offs that the guys have to go out and do, and it just creates a lot of work for them to have to shut off people for $45 or $50. So we try to keep it more minimal and the workload down.
well, just to clarify though, I only missed 1 month by 12 days, so.
But your bill was $350, you said?
Yeah.
So that's
320.
why. It exceeded the $100
But-
threshold.
As water, people use more water, the houses get bigger, you're gonna quickly get to more houses using more than $100 a month worth of
Right.
water.
Yep.
So that's just some of those items that I found out from my experience that South shut
Yeah,
me
no,
off.
that's good. I appreciate that. So I'll let them know that, yeah, we need to email more. And maybe we can include the shut-off date on the invoice. Potential shut-off date if bill's unpaid.
That's why I have auto pay set up.
Yeah, me too. It's a good thing.
which we do provide those options through our website, if I can add that.
We appreciate your story, though.
Yeah. Rich.
I would like to appreciate a 30-day pay cycle like the rest of the world.
If I could motion, I'd motion to double the fee for council members that don't pay their water bill, but I can't do that. So.
Next item. I watched the planning and zoning, and that's a little bit of a question as much as anything. Mr. Mayor, were present as per
Sure.
your thing, give your comments. Some of the comments that were made in the planning and zoning, I didn't personally agree with. Just, disagree, whatever. Not saying anything I wouldn't say up here.
Right.
I guess the question that arose is, we have the sunshine law as a council. If I disagree, let's say you say, I hate red fences and I love red fences, and Bill Colombo loves red fences. You're at planning and zoning, expressing your opinion, which you're entitled to do, and I'm not debating that, but by our very nature, planning and zoning knows who we are. Virtually everybody knows in the city knows who we are, and there's input and influence to that. So if you say you love red fences and they're debating red fences, they know you as the mayor are loving red fences. To further that discussion in planning zoning, let's say Bill and I hate, we go to council or go to planning and zoning and we stand up and say, we hate red fences. I guess as much to Nancy, how does that impact sunshine law? Because now we're having a debate. You love red fences, I hate red fences. He hates red fences, and he hates all fences.
So I can tell you that this is not a clear answer. Obviously, it's a notice meeting, so that parameter of sunshine is fine. It's noticed so people know there's a meeting going on. However, it's noticed for planning and zoning. It's not noticed for a council meeting. So if you have 2 or more council persons there discussing, you could be implicated in violating the sunshine. It's not a clear answer. I don't have a case law. I don't have a statute that says you can or can't. Because it is a notice meeting, that does help. But obviously, if it becomes a council, multiple council members are there, and the debate becomes between council and not planning and zoning, you are inviting a possible lawsuit.
I think we have to, as a council, be very careful of how we proceed in that direction. Because one, I think we may be influencing planning and zoning. They know how we're going to vote one way or the other. If the mayor comes in and says, and I'm using you because you were there, but even if Bill Colombo comes in and says, we know Bill Colombo hates fences. Why are we even having this conversation at this stage? It's essentially over. That's kind of depriving them of the process for it, which I'm always hesitant to do. And it almost comes across as like with the CAC, where we have a liaison for the CAC. A lot of times the liaison is asked, well, how could council look? Well, I don't know how council could look at this, but I would look at this as XYZ, or I will take this back to council. It's almost the same inference. And I think we need to discuss it. Obviously, I don't think we can ban anybody by the First Amendment or anything of that nature, but I think we need to take responsibility amongst ourselves to keep the discussion from planning and zoning it's ultimately going to come to us no matter what. But if it dies in planning and zoning of its own accord, then, there's reason for it, whatever it may be. That's just my thought to that. The other item that I saw in the last meeting, which concerned me a little bit, is at the end there was a discussion of the digital agenda and that sort of thing. That came as a recommendation to use the digital agenda. I got a little concerned because that recommendation was coming from council to use the digital agenda, which we didn't necessarily discuss. So I do ask, just be careful that, when you're saying items that are coming through council or that unless it's directed, just be careful on that item. The rest of the items is your opinion, and so be it. But just be careful of what is being directed as a item of council or a message from council, unless we tell you to, then by all means.
What, I don't recall.
And I just kind of went through the meeting, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, well, so I can address the thing about the digital, obviously. One, not sure what they were aware of as far as what it actually put in, but I just basically wanted to, and it wasn't, I can't remember exactly how I worded it, but I just basically said that I'm going to run my meetings digitally because of it wasn't that a council was directing anybody to go digital. I was just basically pointing out, and more so as a taxpaying resident citizen, I want to lean city as possible. So I was expressing that guys, if you could take a look at this and see if it's something that you could integrate. You know, they did it on the CAC. I'm doing it on council for my meetings. If it's something you guys could do, it'd be a good thing. Not that it was a directive from the council at all.
And you don't know intent. The problem with that is you don't know your intent and you don't know how people are taking it. So I'm not saying you were maliciously doing anything of that nature. It's you know, there's always several parts to communication.
Sure.
It's intent, it's, you know, the words and how it's taken. When we do that, you can only control one, maybe two, definitely can't control them. And we just, as a council, have to be careful of that. And I'm speaking to all of us, be careful of that, because it's not what we're doing, it's how people are taking it. Sure. And, you know, what's the old term? Perception is reality at the end of the day. And that's what we have to be cognizant to. So that's all.
Well, you know, and there's a relationship between both planning and zoning and board of adjustment and us, in as much as everything that goes before them will eventually come before us, which is why I never go to either one of those two meetings. They are there to do their job without, from my perspective, knowing my opinion one way or another on any subject. Let them do their work, because it's going to come to us, and I will let my opinion be known at that point in time. So that's my personal approach to it. So kind of along the lines of what you're saying right there, but you know, I just think it's potentially undue influence or steering. I'm not comfortable with steering the conversation of either one of those two boards, or be perceived as, like you said, my merely saying what I like can be perceived as steering them in that direction. They're going to naturally follow that direction.
So I was actually going to I'll come to this now just because we're on topic, so I'll cover that. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was planning and zoning and the code reviews and stuff that's going on there. So from my perspective, and I hear what you're saying as far as the influence or whatever, you know, outside of being the mayor and representing 3,500 residents, I also am a resident. And so I feel important that I'm able to voice, you know, at the end of the day, I'm part of that decision-making process, just like you guys are. I guess, and I've always, even from the beginning, I mean, there's certain things that planning and zoning are tasked to do. Matters of planning and zoning, and even 5-year annexation plan and stuff like that from the old annexation board. There's stuff that they are tasked to do. Code revisions outside of code around planning and zoning is not really, that's something we've asked them to do. And I never have agreed with that from the start, and for good reason. We're elected by the public. And so these codes and ordinances that we have govern the folks within the city. And so those folks within the city elect us to represent their best interests in those things. And I feel we do a disservice by kicking that to a planning and zoning board. Now, granted, it's going to come back to us at some point anyway for us to make those decisions. But think about the planning and zoning board. You know, the folks have been on there for, you know, several election cycles. They're not elected by the public. They're appointed through the elected officials. But as it comes time yearly to reappoint those, we're not really, you know, vetting those. And I use the example. I'm not. This is strictly hypothetical. I'm not saying any particular person shouldn't be on there or whatever, but just for the conversation, let's say there's a staunch defender of a particular thing. Let's use no boats in the driveway. And as that person's been on the planning and zoning for, you know, years and years and years, and they're you know, good citizen. They're on the planning and zoning board. They're serving, but they have a staunch view about that particular issue and other issues as well. But that one, for example, as time goes on, the residents of the community may have different. You know, that's the job when election time comes. They always say elections have consequences, and so they put people in those positions to facilitate change where they see they want change. And so what we have in that situation, if we never rotate that board per se, the actual citizens within a community aren't able to elect people in those roles to help make those decisions, and we're pushing that responsibility down to that board. Again, preliminarily. It's going to come back to us eventually to make that decision. But I speculate that if the board comes back and says, we don't think we should change this area, we're probably more apt to rubber stamp that because the board has done its due diligence. They've had discussions in public. And again, I want to also point out that those meetings are 1 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of people from the public aren't able to attend those meetings. So I felt even more compelled to go to the meeting and share information. The board's going to make the decision, and I would strongly suggest that if I ever speak from the podium, that you don't look at me as the mayor, even though I am at this particular point, but that you look at me as just a citizen providing information. At the end of the day, I'm going to be part of that decision-making process, whether it's a rubber stamp on what the Planning and Zoning Board does or discussions around overturning whatever they recommend. But I feel compelled as a representative of the community and to be a part of the community that I voice my concerns, and I know I share concerns with a vast majority of the public out there. I'll give an example on the particular subject of the boats. There was a survey that was put out on Facebook, and 60% was on board with making that change. So, I felt compelled to share that. Of course, they aware of that, and I think it's important to look at that data and find out what we really should. Do we keep these codes in place because they've been around forever? Maybe they made sense back then. Maybe they don't anymore. But I guess the real issue I have is, and I really, and this would actually help this concern, obviously, was to bring that back to us. And if we, I think the original intent I had when I took office was that on the nights we didn't have CRA meetings, that we actually would have a code review, and we would even code workshops and call special meetings to code workshops and talk about individual things, discuss them, and make those changes. Because at the end of the day, it is our decision, and it's really not a role of planning and zoning. I really feel it's kind of a undue burden on that board to go through those things for us. And I also want to point out that at that meeting, I want to thank Joe for bringing it up. Is that hey, with the amount of work we got here, we need to probably meet twice a month, and it's true, and it's unfortunate. These are non-elected folks. They're volunteers, and they're going to have to work as hard as council. It just doesn't seem right. And again, that's because of the workload we're putting on those folks. And I really think we should bring that. If it's planning and zoning related, by all means, let them vet it out. But if it's strictly code, like the fence discussion, like boat parking in a driveway, or all these other shed discussion. Obviously, that needs to be done here. I don't think they need to necessarily weigh in on that. That's my opinion on that. And so, I do appreciate what you're saying, though. And and let me go back to the sunshine law. My understanding of the sunshine law, and obviously I've been through the training, and that we can't. If I get up and let's say all of us went to the planning and zoning board meeting, I get up and I say my 3 minutes or whatever about it, and you do the same, and Tom does the same, Bill does the same. We're not debating it with each other. We're just voicing our individual opinion to the board. We're not having a discussion amongst each other. So I think what she mentions, it's a gray area. I think that's why. So I think why that could potentially bring an allegation. I think at the end of the day, I think we would probably be okay there. But
I would be very hesitant to say that.
I would too. I would too.
Ethics rules are
Yes.
any
They're very clear.
conversation between any two of us that we may consider at a later date in the meeting, that's an ethics violation.
Totally agree.
but what I'm saying is that's not a conversation between us.
Yeah, it is if you're both getting up and talking about it in
So
the
if
same room.
I went up and say, I hate fences, and Tom goes up and says, I hate fences, and Bill goes up, I love fences, that's actually a conversation and a foreshadowing of how you're going to vote at a future meeting. And that is expressive, and that's specifically against the sunshine law of basically he are telling me exactly how they're going to vote at a future meeting.
And you did the same thing when you stood up there. I know what direction you're going to go after watching that YouTube. So I know how your position is. I saw it. And honestly, that's wrong. That is wrong as an elected official. First of all, we've past 6-7 years, we worked our asses off to get that black cloud off of us. Now you're putting us under that gray area with potentially a lot of criticism going forward. And I disagree with that. When I was first elected, I wanted to attend some of these boards. I wanted to be educated. I wanted to learn. I was told, don't do it. Number one, my presence alone is going to influence someone there. Even though I don't say anything, the fact that I'm there could influence. And I don't want that. I want to keep everything above board. Number two, if I do say something, I am probably influencing someone on that board, as well as all the citizens that are watching. So that's not right. You know, those decisions are made here and has to remain here. And I totally disagree with what you've done, Mayor. I totally disagree with it. And I'm glad you brought this up. Because at the same time, even going to CAC, the meeting on October 5th, we have Linda Rodriguez, who's the representing the council. She's already there. You got up and said something. Now, isn't that a violation of the Sunshine Law? The fact that she's already there representing the council, but yet you calling yourself a citizen, but yet when you took that podium, everybody knew you as the mayor. And so you said your piece, whatever it was, you represent the city council. And I disagree with that. Now, we have these boards for a purpose. Let the citizens, ultimately it does come to us. At that point, we then voice our opinions or we're representing the citizens. At that time, we should say something. But going forward, and it's like, you know what? Here comes that freaking black cloud that we've tried so hard to get rid of. Now there's going to be a lot of questioning or some criticism from the public, and especially certain politicians out there who's watching the city. And they're going to say, there goes the city again. And I don't want that to happen. I'm proud of where we're at today. I'm proud of what we have. And I don't want to go to that direction. That's my 2 cents.
No, I appreciate the feedback. And like I said, it's a public meeting.
Yeah, but you're there also as the mayor. And everybody recognizes you as the mayor. Everybody recognizes me as a council person. So it doesn't matter if it's public. I get up there, send my 2 cents as a homeowner. But everybody's looking at me as a city council member.
Here's the other element that we have that a lot of citizens and even board members don't have. As I displayed earlier of pontificating on my bill, I have unlimited time and you have unlimited time to talk and express your opinion at any point. And I remember you saying on the most recent meeting that regarding the stats of the Facebook, so I'm not going to get into the details of that. One of those items, though, I happen to disagree with for various reasons. But you have all the time in the world, if it comes through and gets to you, to say, well, you know, Facebook said 60% and blah, blah, blah. And then I can come back and say, well, Facebook, you know, XYZ or whatever. We have all of that time for that dialogue. Is it needed at the planning and zoning stage where they have their own views of looking at things? They obviously have input from the citizens. You know, a lot of those people on planning and zoning have been in the city many more years than me, know many more people within the city than me. You argue that, well, if there was a standout on the planning and zoning, we have every year we go through and approve every new person on that planning or every person on that planning and zoning. Every year they're renewed. They're not there forever. They're there forever by the grace of council at the end of the day. So if there is someone who's not acting in the best interest of the city and solely acting, that is the avenue to then make that correction if it's needed. And I know you're using it as a hypothetical, right, but we have that safety valve that says, okay, well, you know, Joe Smith, you know, you're acting selfishly. You are acting solely for yourself. You are now removed from that. You're not renewed. That is within our purview.
Right, majority vote.
And if I could, I brought this up before, I think it would be real good for there to be some kind of policy procedures for things like that. The planning and zoning, getting on and getting off, there's nothing out there. I kind of brought it up when we did the CAC, you kind of got those things, you know, in line. That would help with those kinds of situations. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I agree.
Until you direct me, I can't draft that.
Let's put those procedures together to get those safety valves to make that work. But the board should function independently of city council. It does cities nationwide. They're always independent. Many times council members yell at planning and zoning or whatever, but that independence is crucial. One, for legal purposes that they're separated, but two, just for sunshine and influence that they're separated. There's a reason that in some cities the P&Z members are actually elected, and council members are elected, and it's two entirely different organizations. We happen to be appointed, but there's reasons for that, and you know, people smarter than I have put those reasons in place through time and failure and legals and lawyers fighting it all out. There's all reasons for that, and we need to respect that and try to keep that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and on that, I even thought that maybe that each council person would have an appointment to that board would be a possible
Can't be
solution.
on boards against charter.
No, we would appoint. So I would have an appointment to the board, you would have an appointment. You would have an appointment.
I don't want to get in. No, I'd rather keep it separate and keep the citizens who want to be part of it, and let them run their own agency.
And that's fine. Like I said, I bring that up, and I'm more concerned about why we are pushing code review stuff to that board. I don't think that's right. I think personally it's a derelict of our duty to talk about that, even though it comes back to us eventually. I don't know why they're doing that work for us. It just doesn't seem right to me. And that's more.
And we can revisit that in the new year and have that discussion. I have no problem with that part of it.
Sure.
I'm just solely focusing on the most recent council meeting, or most recent planning and zoning meeting.
And I'll be honest with you, that's the big reason why. Well, a couple reasons. I actually attend because, one, I want to be as informed as possible. I think I could do a better job the more information that I have. So I want to be active in that. So there's that. Now, I can do that by watching online, coming here, not speaking. But I also do have a vested interest in the city because I live here. And I want, you know.
Yeah, we all do.
Sure. And so I do like to be able to express myself. Now, I can wait till that comes before council and we can have the conversation then. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I know with having them do that work, they don't really have a whole lot of direction other than, here, look at this code, look at this code. So that's another thing I really think. Let's bring it back to council and we talk about it in a new year. I think that'd be a better approach to do that. And like I said, I'm ready to work. If we have to do extra meetings, I'm ready to do that. I think there's a lot of work to be done, and there's an appropriate place for it. And I don't think that board really should be doing that. And especially if it's going to cause them to meet just as much as council, and they don't get a stipend for their time. And it is during the day when a lot of the public has to work and can't be a part of those meetings. So there's a lot of things going against that process. So
I don't necessarily disagree with all that you said, Juan. I think it's something we can address in the new year, and that's fine. I was just trying to focus on that one
like
part.
I said, when I mentioned about the sunshine, again, it's a public meeting. When I campaigned, I told, people know where I stand in a public meeting. I guess technically I could probably, and of course I'm not talking about influencing the board, but outside of that public meeting, I could go to each one of the members and express individually how I feel or whatever. That seems more appropriate to me than actually just coming before the board that's meeting on that and I expressing my opinion on something. Now, and I also go as far as say, just because I express some data points and that doesn't necessarily mean that's how I'm going to vote either. I was basically sharing data and sharing ideas, but ultimately when we had the discussion, I could be swayed either way. I am open-minded, as much as you think I'm not.
Again, it's the intent, the communication, and the reception.
Sure.
I would think that even though your intent may be that I don't have an opinion, if you communicate certain facts in a certain direction, chances are the reception is going to be taken as, oh, he's going in this direction. To then backpedal, that would be somewhat difficult, unfortunately. That's my opinion. So I think I've pontificated enough.
No, appreciate it. I'll turn it down.
Mr. Coppola, the next Innovate Pasco 2050, do they give another, next, besides tomorrow, do they have another, meeting date?
They're going to have more dates in the future. They didn't give me any today, but as soon as I get those, one of the things I committed to them is that we will, use our resources to make sure our residents are aware of the upcoming dates.
That we could,
There
we
will
could
be,
give some input.
yeah, definitely.
Perfect. One other thing that, and I noticed, our ARPA funds, we're approaching a deadline come next year. And I think we're kind of dragging our feet. I don't know, if there's anything else that we've done. I hate the idea of us losing this money. I looked under old business. I did not see anything pertaining to the ARPA funds, but we need to do something real quick, and we're running out of time, and we have money here. We need to use it. We definitely need to use it. We just need to find, we all need to get together and determine what are we going to use it for and spend it before we lose it.
You got 1 year to get cash out the door.
Yeah, so we need to address this every meeting going forward, so, we stay on top. But if we haven't addressed this in the last few meetings, this month is shot. So beginning January, I would like to see us having this every meeting going forward. So, we get the direction to you, so we get to spend.
The grant coordinator monthly report, it was number one on there. They've got some things pointed out. Projects that were identified include road paving assessment, Nick's Park dock repairs, coastal design of limestone pier, coastal design of golf cart crossing, asphalt repair, reclamite on pavement, trim mangroves, mill and overlay estimate, IT information one-time costs, Clear River Landing Water Main Project, a total cost of $1.469 million. So I'm assuming that's how stuff is cubbyholed as of now, or?
Is that how we have them placed out?
Well, sorry, can you say that again? We've identified those costs, but we have to get the cash out the door in 12
Right.
months. So
Directed
if
towards-
we're going to be
Yeah,
using the money to pave, I'm using it poorly since the paving is a piggyback. But if there's other items that we have in there that we have to bid out, we got to get rolling. It's
The paving, I'm waiting for the quotes for the last discussion that we had was roadways under an RSL rating of 4.
Correct.
So right now, Ajax Paving is providing quotes for roadways with that
on the
rating.
piggyback.
So based on that piggyback. So as soon as we have those quotes, those will be in front of council and then they can deploy. So that's just a matter of time. And actually, I sent an email out today following up on those quotes. But it being this month, it's just one of the
There's
hardest
no
months
shot.
of the year to get anything. So, of course,
We
we'll
can
be
keep
following
this
up on
on old business going forward on every meeting. Perfect. Thank you. That's all.
Move on to my comments. The first one I'll talk about. So we just had the town hall, our second town hall. I think it was actually a little bit more attended than the last one, and it was a really good meeting. I've got a lot of good feedback about that. But the residents will appreciate the opportunity to come out and discuss stuff with us openly. So that's a good thing, and I really think the public is appreciating that. One of the things that big thing is communication. What I ran on is to change that, and I think that's happening, and citizens are seeing that. Along with that communication, I have another thing on here I'll talk about, which is the Nixle notifications. Before I do that, going back to the town hall, there was a question that came up about what the citation cost was if you cross Grand in a golf cart and you're cited. It's $114, correct?
Less than my water bill.
So it's $114, and there was actually, and I thought it was a brilliant idea. I love things that come out of these meetings or whatever, can we charge a nominal fee or whatever? So I actually had Nancy look into that to see if that's something that we could entertain to help bridge the gap. And it's
And then the lawyer comes in.
yeah.
I could have told you no, but
Well, I think we all knew.
Yeah, and I thought so as well, but it was a great question that I didn't 100% know the answer to, so I did have her check into it. Just let this, the citizens know that we're looking at all options, even if they may or may not sound good, but we can actually charge more than what the state
There
requires,
is, in
but
some
not less.
circumstances, you can do a surplus on top of what's charged, but you cannot.
that would be going in the opposite
Right,
direction.
right.
of what everyone said.
But it was a great idea, I thought. Just can't do it. So, and again, just to reiterate, as we did in town hall, obviously, I think the entire council is dedicated to trying to make this happen as we're going through the process. So I know it's frustrating for a lot of folks, but we are, doing our best to try to make this happen. So we'll continue to go down that path. Obviously, dredging comes up at every session. We have a conversation, every meeting we have a conversation about. But so I want to give a little bit of update on that. I mentioned that they're going to be setting up a meeting with Matt and our planning Port Authority Board Chair Carl, because he has a presentation over coastal restoration and that kind of stuff. When we going back a couple months when we met with the county, we put that myself, Dave Mueller, Devin Aaron, who else was on that? Oh, Carl. We met with the county to kind of talk about the MSBU stuff they were doing and this whole coastal restoration thing. So kind of the next steps of that was to come back and as a city and talk about that. So we're trying to set up a meeting next week with Matt, had that presentation, and also inviting Anthony for his last name with Pasco in as well. So that should happen next week. Yep. So more to come on that, but we're going to, again, letting the public know that we're continuing to pursue what our options are. And actually, along with that, I'll jump to this. There was the Florida League of Mayors, which I serve on the board of directors for District 9. They sent out a thing from the Florida legislature that announced that there was a funding opportunity available for hurricane repair and recovery projects within counties declared by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, for individual assistance and public assistance categories A through G for Hurricane Idalia. I found it interesting because the funding opportunity is available to assist with the following, and they list mitigation of revenue losses and operating deficits, infrastructure repair and replacement, including road, sewer, and water facilities, beach renourishment, debris removal, dredging with public waterways. The division is authorized to approve requests for resources by local governments, independent special districts, school boards, including charter schools. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, and I know this when Hurricane Idalia came through, Pasco was not included on the original list of FEMA's support. As the threshold was met, we were then added. But for this, which is evidently a different level of support, Pasco's not on that list. So I've engaged the Jeff Branch, who's executive director for Florida League of Mayors. He's reaching out to his contacts at state level to find out more information about that and if there's an avenue to get added to that, because all the surrounding counties are in it except for us. It's kind of strange. So I'm not sure what the reasoning is behind that, but I'm seeking out that information. And I've also engaged Brad Yeager's office as well to obviously see if there's something that can be done to get us added on there. So if I find out more, I'll bring that back. But the opportunity for the amount on here, it was $50 million, I think, significant amount of money. I don't have it here, but it's a lot of money available that we could use for a lot of things that we're going to do. So I'll bring back more once I find out. Okay, that's that. Going back to that Nixle notifications on long line of communication. So for the town hall, I wanted to send out a Nixle notification to notify the public, because obviously I want that meeting to really be a good avenue for the public, and some of them don't know about it. And we found out, and actually that was the same time that we sent one out for the diesel spill. And a time before that, talk that they weren't getting the messages. So I signed up, which I wasn't, to see how it worked or whatever, and to find out what the gap was. And so in those messages, and some didn't get them. I actually, when I signed up, I didn't get the text. I got the emails. So in digging into what we have here at the city, so there's 3 types of alerts. An alert, which is kind of like an emergency, an advisory, which is pretty important, and you have community messages like meetings and special meetings like that, like the town hall. When a person signs up through Nixle, and there's a couple ways to sign up. Obviously, you go through the website and do it. You can also, I think, text a code to the number, and it automatically puts you on there. But by default, they only put you in the alert and advisory bucket. So if the city sends out a community, unless you go out, modify your profile, and actually select you want community messages, you won't get community messages. And there's another issue with the service. As you sign up, there's a body of users called Nixle Wire. That's where all the public that signs up goes into that bucket. There's functionality within there that we can actually, let's say Miller's Bayou has a water problem, but we can isolate it just to Miller's Bayou, boil your water. Unfortunately, we can only do that if we create our own group of users. We can't leverage the public, and we tried this in our testing. I actually zeroed in on my actual residents. Sal sent a message as a test message, and it went out to everybody, even though it was geographically filtered on my specific address. That functionality only works if we go out and create our own group and port the users in. And we don't have any capability to leverage that data that we have out on Nixle Wire that the public has went out and signed up for. We can't, take that list and pop it into a group. We have no ability to use that. We have to kind of start from scratch. So that's not really a great thing. They have another product called Everbridge, I think, that has a little more functionality, but even that doesn't leverage that data. So I get stuff all the time, and I forward it on to Matt as far as the communication tool, something to look at that we could better do this type of stuff notification-wise. But another thing I wanted to point out on that, as far as SMS and text messages, SMS and email messages, there's a I guess an add-on. You remember the name of that, Sal? What was called?
I'm sorry, the name of the add-on? Or
The smart bridge.
it's a smart hub. The smart hub that actually is something that we would have to control.
Yeah.
That sends the emails or the text messages.
Right.
Right now we have.
This smart hub, whatever it's called, it runs, and the idea behind it is to save multiple messages going out. It uses the least path of resistance. So if you have an email address and you have an SMS out there, a phone number, it will send an email, not an SMS. And so that's why people aren't getting SMSs, even though we say send an SMS. That add-on basically says, okay, well, we've got an email address, we're going to prefer that and send it that, so it overrides that. And we have no capability to override that setting to force an SMS. So one of the things we need to look at is obviously turn that off, so when we say we want to send a text, it actually sends a text. I think we pay $3,500 a year for that product, and where's I going with that? $3,500 for the product. There's no additional charge to turn that on or off. We get 500,000 messages, and so if we turn that off, it would probably send out more, but we're well below that 500,000 messages. So I think that's something we probably ought to do, just to make sure we're sending out texts when we want to send texts. But anyway, as overall communication thing with that, I think we need to look at, one, do we continue to use this, which the hope would be we could, but we're so limited on our data that it might make more sense to start scratch something else.
All I know is I haven't got a thing in years.
And I saw you
I
posted.
always get them. I got the ones for
I
the
haven't got one in
I
here.
always get them.
I post the settings page. I'm signed up for everything every week. I'm signed up for different groups.
So did you not get the emails?
No.
Well, so that's another issue.
I'm signed up for emails, text, whatever you can sign up for, it's signed up.
So it sounds like even the idiosyncrasies that are part of this, sometimes they just don't work at all either.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. So I think
It did originally, years ago. I signed up for this when the city first got it. That was a long time ago. And
So-
for a while it worked, and then I never got one again.
I get mine. I get Newport Richies. I get everybody's.
But anyway, so it's something we look at in the future. I think we need to improve that process. So, the other thing that Nancy found out for us, and I'll turn it over to her, just give a little more detail. Obviously, charging at the boat ramp has been discussion and whatnot. So she actually looked into that to see what we can and can't do, if we can charge, and I'll turn over to you, just kind of give a little.
Luckily, I didn't have to look too far because the prior city attorney looked into it. And as you know, this has been a discussion for council many times. And Sal was nice enough to send me the minutes from the many times it was discussed. So you're going to hear what you've already heard from the prior city attorney. It's possible. It's just not always, you just can't do it. You have to have, I'm trying to think the best way to, you have two kind of multiple barriers. So you do have the Fish and Wildlife grant. So there's limitations on what you can use the money for. It's very specific what you can use the money for. So that would be one thing you'd have to take into account. You can charge different, you may be able to charge different rates to city residents versus non-residents, but you can't just do it. Not that you can't just pick a number and go. You're going to have to justify it. What you're trying to avoid is the equal protection challenge, and you have to show that what you're doing is a rational reason and you're doing it in a rational way. So that would probably most likely entail someone that does numbers, looking at this is how much it costs to maintain. This is what we're getting from this grant. This is how much we can get from the members of of our city who are already paying taxes, and here's what we need you to do to make that up. So there's a lot of legwork that would have to go into it to figure out what those amounts would be. And then of course the next step is what you guys have always talked about, how do you implement it? So it's not a direct no, which is what he thinks I always give him, but not always. But there are a lot of steps that are involved if it's something you're interested in doing.
So, moral story is possible, but do a little work to do it. So,
yeah,
later discussion on that. And then the last thing, I just kind of mentioned before or whatever, but as you notice, I did not get my book this time. I'm totally digital. So I'm doing my part to save that. I challenge you guys to kind of take a look at it and see if it's something that you can do. I'd really like to alleviate all the paper that we put out. It's a waste. It's a lot of extra work for Ashley to put those together. So if we can, even if we do just a couple of us or whatever, so, obviously make your own decisions. It's obviously not something we're mandating, but the availability is there. She's done a really nice job of being able to parse things out so we can get to it very quickly. And I think it's better than thumbing through pages. So, and you can edit that and actually keep your digital copy for, as long as you want it and go back to it. It's a little easier than going back to your files and paper. So I think there's some advantages here. I'm going to do it. I like it. If you guys jump on board, that'd be great too. And we could save some money there. That's all I got. So we'll move on to comments from boards and committees. I have one signed up, CAC, Dave Mueller. Welcome.
Dave Mueller, 5439 Blue Point Drive, and Linda normally would give this report since she's appended to that committee, but she texted me and asked me to present this tonight. Wanted to remind the city residents and council that on December 19th we're having our holiday light judging. That will occur from 6 to 8 p.m. That evening, and I think we're going to be escorted by the fire truck. So have your lights on that day, on December 19th. We were interested in beautification in the city, potentially looking for a grant of about $6,000 for art in our city, and some of this would be to beautify or create a mural, potentially a postcard mural at one of the solid walls at maybe Nick's Park or one of the other parks. So our request was, is there an opportunity for any grant to the tune of $6,000 or so? And I think we were going to try to address potential interest of local artists and see if we could get some donations in that regard. It was brought to our attention that a lot of the city of Port Richey signs scattered around the city, welcome to Port Richey, that kind of thing, potentially need sprucing up. Observation was made that a sign, at the front of Waterfront Park potentially needs replacing. Evidently, it's in disrepair as well. We also had some discussion about potential grants since we did not win that shade sale. We'd like to continue to press forward with that. Also, potentially either continue to look for other alternative grants or even just fund it ourselves, because shade at that playground structure is probably an important thing, and the residents and the people that utilize that would probably benefit from that. The other longer term option is look at planting trees around there. Now, it takes time for trees to grow, but it seems like there would be a lot of opportunity in the area of grants for tree grants as well. So those were a couple things that were brought to discussion, and would like some traction on that in that area. One of the, some of the utility guys brought it to our attention that there at one point in time used to be grills in the parks, these hard cast iron grills, I guess, and you put your charcoal in them and have your grill. There's either they're gone or they rusted out or they've never been replaced. So potential is maybe we can look at that as an opportunity to spruce some of these parks up with one of these charcoal grate and grill systems there. And actually, I had some experience with our old neighborhood doing that, and those are not very expensive at all. It's a bag of concrete, and it comes in, you sink it, and it's done. It's, a couple $100 per grill. Our residents really. Other things that we brought up, we wanted to look at, is there a way to maybe renegotiate the rules at the waterfront park that we're encumbered with. Potentially have some dialogue with the trustees there and see if there's maybe some opportunities for us to come to an agreement where we could utilize that in maybe a different manner or a larger manner with less restrictions than we have to live by. So it's just a discussion item. We thought it might be beneficial if maybe we had some conversations there, see what kinds of ideas and events that we want to have at Waterfront Park, and then maybe have some discussion about maybe is there an opportunity to change some of those rulings. Thank you very much.
Hey, Dave, before you, there was something that was brought up. I thought that, and maybe Linda was going to bring it up. It was
There was one other thing I forgot about the community garden.
well, no, murals. There was guys.
We started off with that.
Oh, did I miss that? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. We were looking first.
Wanted to get some.
Grant for that, remember?
Well, the grant you guys was wanting to see if council provide some budget. I thought for that.
Either or. I mean, there's all kinds of options. It's
Oh, I took it as a request to have the grant coordinator look for 6,000 in grants.
Yeah, yeah, that was why I missed it. I guess my understanding during the meeting was that's
either or.
if that doesn't pan out, they actually want to see if they can get some funding from us, have a budget to do
Start
that.
with option A.
Yeah, absolutely, that'd be great.
All right.
Well, you got A and B and C, right?
So-
Actually, for that matter, the shade sales were that way too. Is it something that's critical that we want to just press in on that? Do we have funds for out of the CAC, Penny for Pasco, things like that? There's a lot of revenue sources, right? Funding sources that we could utilize there. So that was it as well. And the fact that I guess the state of Florida, the Extension Service folks came out and toured our site across from Olsner Park that was acquired by the city. And by the way, last I checked, there was some concern, I guess, whether that had actually transferred title over. I don't think it had transferred. There was somebody checking into that. It has transferred?
Do we have the title?
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the county. They submitted it to DEP, and they're supposed to be sending it back to us.
Okay.
Ashley and I are constantly in contact and waiting
Okay.
for that.
But anyway, long story short, they evidently have these master gardeners and essentially help facilitate the program. And then they would, have a community presentation where they'd come out and engage the public that want to participate in that and go over the rules of engagement and how they participate and share in, getting planting and watering and weeding and all that stuff. So essentially, this is something that we're pursuing, and I believe Mr. Koppler has some experience in that, and he shared that with us. So another win. Thank you.
Hey, you mentioned the CAC at the 19th at 6 o'clock. Did they give a starting point?
Yeah.
6
Meet at 5:45 at your place.
Okay. I want to make sure nothing changed.
Any other boards?
It's easy for me to find.
Yeah, Tom's got all that.
Any other boards or committees? I'll bring up something for planning and zoning just for the sake of time. I obviously was there, and the board voted that Joe would be the full-time position rather than wait till, obviously that needs to be an agenda item for us to discuss, or can we do that as a consensus here?
Well, it's going to be the next agenda. Your chairperson is going to be coming to speak, sadly, but
Okay.
next time, yeah. And they're not meeting until after, they may. They aren't meeting until after your next meeting. I don't think we're changing that January 3rd date, I believe.
Okay.
Because I don't think we have a quorum.
Yeah, I just thought if we go ahead and take care of that now, we'd save time and he could actually be installed on the board. That's okay. We'll wait. Okay, moving on.
If I may, I just wanted to, until we kind of figure out how this is going to work, I wanted to let you know what P&Z's done. Even I'm not on the board, obviously, but I'm there. And you've seen a little bit of it. You have an ordinance January regarding the A1 district that we're going to talk about in January. They have also recommended a change to section 109-424 on finalizing the ordinance with the building official, and that will be coming to you shortly. Also, you directed me to work on the Article 4, Division 1, adding seawalls, on finalizing that with the building official, so you'll see that shortly. This last meeting, they also talked about vehicle and truck parking, Chapter 36, Article 2, and they determined the recommendation is to make no changes, so you're not going to see anything on that. So if somebody on council feels like that's something that needs to be addressed differently, it's not a planning and zoning issue, it's under a different code provision, so it is something you guys can, on your own, without them, discuss and make modifications to should someone care to. So I want to bring those to your attention too, so you know they've been addressed and there's no recommendation to do anything, but if someone has a need or a desire to do so, it's still there for you. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to bring the vehicle parking back to us to discuss whether we're going to do change or not. But since they didn't make any recommendation one way or another, I think, again, it's our responsibility to talk about that. So what do y'all think? Put it on it, or wait and discuss it more of a broader topic later?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
And that's what I think, and I've spoken to most of you about this already. I think at some point we do need to have a conversation about a direction, either for P&Z or a different direction to have these reviewed. P&Z is working very hard. They're working really hard, and I'm not taking anything away from them. But they either need more direction or we need to break it up somehow or do something. And it may be a conversation that Mr. Koppler has to have, but we need to figure that out.
And I saw that as evident when I watched the P&Z meeting. They're like, all right, so what's this here?
Yeah.
It's not that they don't know, it's plopped in front of them, they're not sure.
And I don't know what put that particular one on the list.
Because what the direction they got was look at the codes. So our
We
very
have
first meeting,
specific codes, though, not
I'm going
just
to tell
all
you.
of them.
So the very first meeting, they knew their direction was look at the codes. I said, your direction is look at the codes. So they picked codes.
Okay.
Different people in the audience made some suggestions, different
Okay.
members of the board made suggestions, and that made our first list of 10 or 11 things, and we've just
Gotcha.
kind of worked through them. And I think we're on number 5,
Yeah,
and it's
I
been
think that's
3 months.
a good thing to discuss in the
Yeah.
new year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda for a motion and or.
We made it to the consent agenda. Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Motion second, further discussion? Anyone from the public like comment? See no hands, will put it to vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Council business. First up is the second reading of ordinance number 23-693, amending chapter 127, article 4, section 127.90. I will turn that over to
Nancy for her reading.
Thank you. Ordinance number 23-693, an ordinance of the City of Port Richey, Florida, amending section 127-90 of Article 4 of Chapter 127 of the City of Port Richey Code of Ordinances, modifying which building materials may be used to construct a fence and ensure open space remains, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, so I'll open up with some discussion again. Obviously, I've been adamant about this from the onset, and as you probably noticed in front of you, I brought a fence panel that, based on our current, if this goes through and I sign it tonight, that particular panel would be illegal to have in the city. I want to talk about that particular panel. One, I think it's important to visual aid to help, I guess, drive the points that I've been trying to make. And to be quite honest, I've been a little disappointed as we talk about this, especially on the first reading, when I brought up some what I thought were good arguments. It just, nobody made any comments. We didn't have any discussion about it. It just was motion, second and voted. So I'm somewhat disappointed that as we talk about these things that affect the lives of our residents, that we just flippantly do things and we don't really think about the problem that's going to cause down the road. Now, I point this out again. Obviously, whatever we do tonight on this particular ordinance really doesn't have any immediate effect on anything. Whatever fences are out there, they're grandfathered in, they're fine. They're not going to be tore down unless they have to, I think it's over 50% repairs, then they would have to be brought up to code. So it's really not going to do anything for all the fences that are out there, which is a good thing, to a certain degree. I don't know. One of the things I wanted to discuss tonight was what is our intent here, and the reason I asked that is because when we talk about visibility, the code before didn't specify any particular visibility constraints. I don't even know what it said. Iron, and the overall tone of it was so you could have visibility, but I don't think it actually specifically said that. Is that a fair statement?
To be honest with you, I don't remember. This has
The
been going on
It's in
so
there.
long.
the old code just says should be able to, so the view is not obstructed by adjacent property owners.
Right.
So we're trying to, the idea was to make a definable, quantifiable code that Mike can go through, because what may be visible to you may not be visible
Right.
to him. And that's the idea, to quantify something.
Okay. So along those same lines, if we move down, so that's item number 2 is where you see all the red changes. But if we move down to 3, and this is, I guess, my concern here, and there's been things brought up about, build a shed and, build it 15 foot high, a couple feet wide and very, very long, up 200 square feet. That actually effectuates a wall at that point. But if we go to item 3 here, this is what concerns me. So it says no natural fences, plantings, shrubs, or hedges established after the effective date of the ordinance from which this chapter is derived shall be planted and maintained at a height greater than 4 feet along and from the waterfront property line to the nearest building line on residential property. So my question to the council is, why are we so concerned about visibility of the actual fence when I could put up a fence with whatever gappage in it, but then plant right next to it a hedge or even vines or whatever? As long as I maintain that at 4 foot height, I'm not seeing through that fence, no matter what kind of spacing or lack thereof it has. So I think the intent here is really, we don't want 6 foot privacy fences, obviously. 4 foot, you're going to see over it. I don't know why we're worried about so much of the spacing on these fences when we can build a natural fence, maintain it 4 foot high, you can't see through it. All we're doing is restricting residents from being able to put up a nice fence. And I'd also like to go a little further on this. I think there's some value in having a 4 foot fence that has no gaps in it for people who have animals. An example, somebody walks down the yard, you got a couple of gappy dogs next door to you, they can see through that fence, whatever it is, and they bark and they cause noise and it's irritating. If you had that all closed in, you have some privacy, and you don't have that. Again, you can get to that point by planting a natural fence next to your fence. Why not? And actually talking about vines, it's vines and stuff grow through that and you keep them trimmed or whatever, it's totally obscured. It would look much better to me to actually have a nice closed PVC fence or wood fence or whatever, because at the end of the day, you're not seeing through it anyway. So all we're doing is adding an additional burden to be able to get to that point. So I really think the intent of all this was, let's not have a wall going back. You want to see the water line. I don't know how much you really need to see through the 4-foot fence, but it is here and we're discussing it. My biggest concern, again, it's not affecting anybody that has fences now, but a new guy comes, moves to Port Richey, buys his waterfront property, he's all excited about putting a fence up to beautify his property, and he goes to find out that he has to have, based on how we got it written now, at least 50% open space. And that's going to bring me to my next argument. If you see the fence in front of you, this particular fence has 3-inch pickets. The gaps are 2 5/8. Okay, you can see through that fence fine. So the visibility is there, but I'm also going to draw another scenario here. If you widen that gap to 3 inches, so you have 3-inch pickets and 3-inch gap, you're going to even have more visibility than what you have here. But you're still not going to be compliant because you see the top and the bottom rung obscure. So the minute that you take equal size pickets and equal size gaps and you put a larger post, or you have to have at least 2 cross members on there, you're never going to get there. So basically, in order to get a compliant fence, we're going to have to make sure that our gaps are bigger than our pickets in order to compensate for that. And I would venture to say that Mike, or whoever the building department is in the future, is going to have one heck of a time trying to figure out if 50% is there or not. Because if you look at that, eyeball it, you kind of say, well, it looks 50%, but it's really not. It's visible. But, in order to get to that, you could really have somebody do some math and realize that it's very difficult to get to 50%. So I think we need to look at changing the 50% open space. I have ideas. I've mentioned those. One was make it proportionate to the picket size. For example, a 3-inch picket in this particular scenario, your gap has to be at least 50%, and this is obviously, you could change this to 75% or whatever, but let's just say 50%. Whatever the minimum restrictive policy we can put in place, it still maintains visibility, but doesn't burden a consumer with being able to purchase products, and they don't have to special order them. In a 3-inch picket scenario like this, you'd have to have at least 1.5 inches gap or greater. That would be one way to solve it, or 75%, whatever the math works out on that. But at 50% open space in general is way too burdensome and it's going to cause problems, and people are going to be insanely angry when they go to put up a fence and they look at this and I can't put this fence up. And I'd also like to point out that this is a 3-foot fence. So realistically, you have a foot above where they could build the fence to 4-foot height, and that's not even taken into consideration.
Space.
Huh?
That's open space.
Not according to the way it's written. It doesn't matter how big the fence is. It just says the fence itself, whether it's 3 foot, 2 foot, 1 foot, 4 foot, has to have 50% open space. So it's incumbent upon us as a council, as we review these codes, to look at them very objectively. We consider all factors. We don't want to end up writing a code that's going to come right back to us. And I'll mention something else here. That's got 2 cross members. All right. If we change that and we say consumer comes in and says, okay, I'm going to put 5 or 6 cross members. Well, then you're obscuring even more. So, we don't want to leave that out too. We need to make sure that at most you can have 2 or 3 cross members. I mean, whatever gaps that we leave in the law are going to be used against us, if you will, to try to and here's the problem. You're always going to have people that push the envelope. They're going to look for ways to, how can I do what I want to do and stay within the law. So, we don't want to punish the overwhelming majority of public for a few bad actors. And I made the analogy that, when you go to the bowling alley, which I do every Wednesday night, there's a bar there and people have a couple drinks and bowl and have a good time, right? You do have people that overindulge, a select few, and there may even have to be a police call to take them out of there. but you don't shut down the bar within the bowling alley for those couple folks. So when we write these laws, we want to make sure we cover all bases. We accomplish the intent that we intend to accomplish in the least restrictive manner possible. So I really think that we're going way above on this, and we're going to make it difficult to purchase a diesel fence. And that's why I went out and purchased that, just to give a visual when we're talking about it, to really see, would there be any reason why we wouldn't care, we would want a citizen not to be able to put up that fence along the waterfront, other than it's cedar, and it probably wouldn't last as long or whatever. But the material aside, that's plenty visible, and you can see somewhere near 50% by our definition, because it's 3-inch pickets, 2 5/8 inch gap. So, any comments from you guys on this?
The original intent of this, and I believe it actually came from the building department to a degree, was to establish a quantifiable. This fence was one of their, and Mike, correct me and raise your hand or throw something at me if I'm saying something incorrect, but this was one of the issues that they had in enforcement for fencing, and one of the issues that they've had with citizens in our city, that there was no quantifiable means for saying what is visible, what is non-visible. He would go out there and, it's a solid fence, and the citizen, the bad doer, would say, no, it's visible. If I go on this corner, I can see right through to the water, and that's completely visible. And that was one of the reasons we did this. That's why we didn't touch anything about the natural fence plantings or anything of that nature. That the idea was to modify this code as minimalistic as possible, to give the tools to the building department to enforce something that they were getting complaints on.
Yeah, and that's why I would, if I could have floor, that's why I would even advocate, why don't we just say you can have a 4-foot fence? There is no requirement to have it open or not. And again, I bring that up because of natural fence.
Well, let me finish though. They were getting the complaints from adjacent neighbors saying, well, I can't see through, I can't see down the canal because my neighbor has this up, and they planted these plantings and it came up and I can't see, so that's the reason for number 3, and I can never see who comes down the canal and whatever, and I don't even know all the complaints that they were going through. But that was the impetus for putting this in place. Yes, we changed it a little, include traditional building materials, because I believe at one point one person was trying to make a fence out of tires, and items such as that. And we were using it as an opportunity to give him the tools to make the city look better, because you give them the opportunity, they will. It was tires, it was concrete blocks,
Pallets, I think.
it was pallets, it was all kinds of things to try to put up something. I don't even know what it was. So that's why we modified the traditional building materials, and the 50% was the quantifiable idea to give him a tool to enforce. Now, do I think he's going to be out there and say, look at it? But again, if you say, well, we'll make the space 1.5 times or half times the picket. All right, well, I do a 6-inch picket in a 3-inch space, or I do an 8-inch picket in a 4-inch space. That's essentially a block wall, especially if I start putting in cross members and 10 cross members. So to a degree, you're saying, all right, well, now let's take this fairly simplistic modification when we're trying to do as minimalistic as possible and start adding all of these criteria. You can't have more than 3 cross members, and you can't have this and that and the other thing. The next thing you know, the code is 12 pages long with do's and don'ts, and don't hit this and don't do that and don't put vines on it, but you can do this, or you can do a block. We were just trying to make the simplest modification to satisfy the need that actually came from code.
Yeah.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you had input on this too, to try and address the needs of the enforcement.
Yeah, the initial was the material, and it evolved from there. It was because we had chicken wire,
Which you still can have under the current code.
which it was chicken wire, pallets just set up there, tires, half chain link, half slats in between with the old chain link, and arguments about seeing through the fence. So, but it started out as material, and then from there it evolved. When it left me, it evolved.
And I think the material is very important. For that, I mean, people using tires, stuff like that, obviously we can rein that in. Even on these, I mean, you can technically, I mean, chicken wire is a traditional building material that's intended to be a fence. So chicken wire is still very much alive in this code. So if we want to outlaw chicken wire, we need to specifically say other than chicken wire, because we can still do that here. That was another thing I meant to bring up. But like, as he says, the original intent is all these crazy materials people were using, so we rein that in. But it's evolved, and I really feel it's evolved in a very negative manner, because, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that fence. You can see through it just fine, but it does not meet the 50% standard. And like I said, you can even widen those gaps, and it doesn't meet it. So we're being way too restrictive on that. So
I look at the original code, and it's pretty clear to me what the original intent was. When they said chain link fence or wrought iron fence, they're basically saying a fence that from a reasonable distance was effectively invisible. You could see right through it. That was the original intent. Anything you do like this, you're getting away from that. Yeah, that is not like the chain link fence. Now, yeah, people put slats in them, people grew up plants. This is not my baby. I mean, we have spent so much time on this, as to reach the point of ridiculousness to me about slat sizes and space sizes and all this kind of stuff. And no matter what we do, somebody's not going to be happy. But we got what we got. This is a second reading.
I agree.
This is a second reading.
We're here. I mean,
this is the second reading. So if you want to make major changes, we go back and we start all over again, and you get more legal bills because you're rewriting a new ordinance.
Yeah.
No matter what we do, we're going to piss somebody off. Oh, yeah. That's the nature of what we do.
I would, that's, yes, you're exactly right. And again, just by,
I call the motion. We have talked about this enough.
Second.
well, I'm not finished discussing, so.
Now I called the motion.
Yeah, but
we've been talking about this, Eric. We've been talking about this for hours and hours and hours, and you are right where you were at the beginning, and you're just going to keep on talking about it.
Yep, I agree.
That's why I called the motion. It's been discussed to the fullest extent. The Robert's rules. I call the motion. I want a motion.
Motion to approve second reading ordinance 23-693, amending chapter 127, article 4, section 127.9B.
Second.
Right. That motion second. Any further discussion? I've said my piece, so I'll rest. Anybody from the public like to speak? Dave Mueller, welcome.
Well, let's make this dead horse right again. The reality is all of you have brought up important points. I think this discussion about the material, need to define that, and this 50% rule, I can look at this as 3 foot high, and then you got to infinity. So is that meet the 50% test? I think it does. That's my opinion. I can have one, just like each and every one of you do.
Not me. I don't live in a waterfront.
You can still have an opinion. That's my point. I think the intent and what you're trying to accomplish is, one, what can we do to put parameters around this material and this structure that's, one, gonna add value to Port Richey, right? Because we've got a lot of shabby fences out there, and eventually, through passage of time, salt water's gonna rust out the chain link, and you're gonna have to replace it, and at some point in time, that's gonna have to be addressed. But I think this 50% rule, I think you're trying to comply with something that is very difficult to manage from an administrative standpoint. I think it needs to be addressed in two ways. One, what's the building officials' input toward this? Is this gonna be a green light or a red light? If a fence goes through the permit process, certainly they can weigh in on that, and they can allow a scenario like this because they're putting an example together. They're going to define the material, possibly show them what the picket spacing is, and let them opine on that. Once they approve it, and what I've understood is they've approved a lot of fences around here. In fact, one of my neighbors had a fence approved, and then a week later or 2 weeks later, they made him take every other slat out because they approved it by accident, and it was a solid stockade fence, So, this point, let's let this thing go to rest. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Anyone else like to speak? Before I call the vote, I think it's a valid thing to ask Mike as far as 50%. Would you mind commenting and see if that's, any comments at all on that? Is you good with that, or is it feel if we change it all, or?
I have no comment. I enforce what you guys put into the code. Because it's going to be objective, whether it's me as a building official or somebody else. My interpretation of see-through, it's see-through. But your neighbors may not see it that way, and it's going to be a back and forth. Whatever you guys decide, I'll enforce.
Yeah, no, I'm more concerned with your ability to manage this 50% open space, because obviously there's going to be some calculations involved.
You take this fence right now, and you're 2 5/8. Am I going to make somebody tear a fence down over 3/8 of an inch? No. So if I show up and that's got 3-inch pickets and 2 5/8 in between it, you're compliant in my eyes.
Well, that's an existing fence, though. But if somebody says, "I want to put this fence up," you get the data in there. I would think that you would have to deny this fence based on our law.
If you put in there that has to be 50% a clear opening, yes and no. Am I seriously going to go out there and measure every single picket?
6 inches off the ground, and then that complies. Instead of 4 inches off the ground, and then it complies. Based off of a high fence, which what is allowable, you set that right on the ground, setting it off of a 4-foot height, allowable. That complies.
Yeah, if you gap the bottom, that's correct. You could probably finagle that, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having the fence at that point. And you definitely can't see through the bottom of the fence.
But if he takes his calculation to the 4-foot maximum allowable, and that's a 3-foot high fence, that complies.
You're correct.
So that technically that fence is in compliance by
raising it.
Well, not even by raising it that much, taking it to the 4-foot height.
Yeah, well, that fence doesn't have the capability the way it is, but point taken.
I mean, look.
I guess I'm more concerned with how is he going to calculate this going forward, because, I was actually going to do some calculation. I thought I'm not going to get in all that math and try to prove a point. So I just brought the visual. But, it's very difficult to find out where you're at. But I'll call the vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Nay. Motion carries. Next up, item number 4, interlocal agreement between City of Port Richey, Pasco County for disaster response and recovery related services. I'll turn it over to Ms. Copeland for introduction.
Thank you very much. Back in September, the council approved the Port Richey Pasco County interlocal agreement. This agreement enables the City of Port Richey and Pasco County government to jointly utilize resources for any requested disaster response or service. The county attorney has stipulated that each municipal interlocal agreement must undergo formatting and substantive changes to meet the county standards, ensuring uniformity in disaster management agreements with all municipal partners. The changes that they have requested are highlighted on the attached updated agreement. Staff requests council approve and implement the presented revised agreement.
Motion to approve the interlocal agreement between the City of Port Richey and Pasco County for disaster response.
Second. Have a motion second. Further discussion? Anyone from the public like to speak? Seeing no hands, I'll put it to vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to old business. Anybody have any old business things you'd like to discuss?
One item, actually the first one, the Sunshades of Waterfront Park, I think it's just an update. It says grant application denied, awaiting direction from council. I think we all agreed that they should reapply when available for those. Unless I'm speaking out of line here, but I think that's
what we mentioned previous.
that's all I have.
It's not an action item.
The CAC resolution, we signed that. Second.
Nope, you've asked me to do some more, modifications, which I have not gotten back to you yet.
Oh.
We'll get that in January.
Okay.
Combining. Want to combine the old ones and do it?
Well, I thought you did that, but maybe not. Okay. Was there something else I want to? Okay. That's all we got. Anything else, or move for a motion? Motion adjourned. A second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. We'll take 5. Come back.
Sounds like I don't know who motioned that adjournment. Everyone said it, everyone seconded it.
So I'll sort all that out.
I think it's just